Hello, this is Richard Feather Anderson, and I teach a course here at Globe Institute entitled Sacred Geometry, the Harmonics of Space. It's part of a course called Sound Consciousness and Spirituality. SH140B is the number. This course gives me an opportunity to share my passion for sacred or symbolic geometry. I start with a broad overview of the whole territory of sacred geometry, sort of like being your tour guide for a journey through what I call sacred geometry land. I start the tour by letting you know that sacred geometry bears little resemblance to a course in geometry that you may have had in high school. This geometry is not a branch of mathematics. Rather, it's a branch of philosophy, cosmology, and physics. In fact, you can think of it as the physics of the ancient world. And speaking of the ancient world, one of the traditions that I'm going to be tapping into is the Platonic Pythagorean mystery school tradition, which I was initiated into, and Islamic sacred art. So after redefining what sacred geometry is all about and how it's different from mundane geometry, I'll explain what sacred geometry does for us, how it works in the world, in the material world. In other words, why should we care about it? Well, one of my favorite ways of explaining that is to say sacred geometry is what makes it possible for existence to exist. We wouldn't be here without it, so it's really important. After getting a broad overview of all the different aspects of sacred geometry, and what it does for us, we spend the rest of our time together going into detail into 3 areas within sacred geometry land. And that I think will be particularly of use to you as sound healers. So we're going to look at the golden ratio and how it appears in nature, art, and the human body. I'll guide you through drawing a golden rectangle and a golden spiral with compass and straight edge. This course has some experiential parts to it. Can't really learn sacred geometry just through your mind, according to the recommendation from Pythagoras or Plato or both of them. So I will be showing lots of images on the slideshow, and we'll have times when we're drawing and doing things with compass and straight edge. Another exercise we're going to do, I'll show you how the golden ratio guides the growth of most of the plants and animals on this planet. We're going to be coloring in some drawings that show the steps and how the plants grow their bodies in a geometrical progression. I'll show you how to measure your own bodies on your own to show how your skeleton is proportioned by the golden ratio. And also, I will, at the very end, I will share my own theories on making a correspondence between the golden ratio and the state of consciousness, because after all, this institute is called the Sound and Consciousness Institute, so I want to make that connection. I'll take you on a journey to explore geometry as a symbolic language, another aspect of it that I just am really passionate about, to give you some insights on how you can augment your sound healing treatments by showing your clients visual images of sacred art and sacred geometry art, mandalas and things like that. I'll give you a foundation for how to make those choices about adding visual geometry to your treatments. To do that, we're going to take a deep dive into the ancient knowledge from cultures all over the world about the traditional symbolism of geometrical shapes, of symmetry patterns, and numbers. Now, I will also give you some ideas about how to structure your sound healing treatments using Plato's Law of 3. So it's not just about geometry. He gave us a lot of teachings of how to apply all this to social life. And then lastly, I'll give you an alternative spatial geometry-based way of understanding the mathematics that's commonly used to describe the musical intervals. I'm going to use my background in architectural proportions to show you how to see the relationships that you hear in music. For instance, I'll convert the octave and other intervals into rectangles so that you can see the nature of the relationship concretely instead of described by ratios of numbers, which admittedly is a more abstract language. I'll explain what the ratios mean and how they're derived by reviewing the simple mathematical principles that it's all based on, in case you've forgotten them or never understood them or were taught them by somebody you could understand. I will use Pythagoras' tool for explaining this, the monochord, which will allow you to see the numbers as they show up on measured distances of vibrating strings. This will make a connection between the spatial or the geometrical relationships in the vibration and the sound vibration relationships, so that you can also understand the mathematical language that's used to explain the intervals. So you'll come out with two different ways: a spatial understanding of different lengths of strings and how that produces different sounds, and how we use the math to very precisely describe what those relationships between the different intervals are. So I am at the end of this session, by the way, I'm always delighted when a number of students say that the way I explained it at last made it comprehensible to them, that they understand what the mathematical ratios mean. So I look forward for doing that for you if you've been confused about all that. I'm also always delighted by the most common appreciation to this whole course that I get here at the end from students, which is, you've opened my eyes to see the world in a completely new way. You've changed my life forever. Well, I hope to do that for you too. Thank you for all the previous students, and I look forward to meeting you, those of you who come and participate in the future. Thank you, and see you then.